My friend, I want to share something with you, something that might shake you a little bit. You know, people look at me and they say, Bruce, you're so fast, you're so natural, you must have been born this way. They call it talent, they call it gift. They make it sound like some kind of mystery. But let me tell you something, and it's a lie. Not just about me, about everyone you've ever looked at and thought they're just naturally gifted. You see, we human beings, we love our myths. We love to believe that some people are chosen, some people are special, some people are just different. It makes us feel better about our own limitations. Oh, I could never do that. I wasn't born with the talent. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about talent, everything you've been taught to believe about natural ability, what if it's all just a story we tell ourselves? What if I told you that I discovered something that changed everything I thought I knew about human potential? You see, my friend, I've spent my whole life studying not just martial arts, but the way people learn, the way they grow, the way they become what they become. And what I really found, it's going to disturb some of your most basic beliefs. Because once you see what I've seen, once you understand what I understand, you can never go back to believing in limitations the same way again. This isn't about positive thinking. This isn't about motivation. This is about truth, raw truth. And the truth is this: we are living by a mythology that keeps us small, keeps us limited, keeps us from seeing what we really are. Let me tell you about this mythology we live by. When I was young, I believed the stories too. I believed that some people were just chosen, that Muhammad Ali was born to be a fighter, that Mozart came out of the womb composing symphonies, that certain people had something in their blood, in their genes, that the rest of us could never touch. This mythology, my friend, it's ancient. It goes back thousands of years. We've always needed to explain why some people rise above the ordinary, why some people achieve what seems impossible. And the easiest explanation? They're different. They're special. They have something we don't have. You know what this creates? Castes, the gifted and the ordinary, the chosen and the rest of us, the talented and the hopeless. We've created gods out of people who simply understood something we didn't. But I'll tell you when everything changed for me. I was maybe 19, 20 years old. I was training in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. The gym was empty, the world was asleep, and there I was, repeating the same punch, the same kick over and over and over again. And suddenly I stopped. I looked at my hands. They were raw, bleeding from the heavy bag. My legs were shaking from exhaustion. And I thought to myself, if this is natural, if this is a gift, if this is something I was born with, why does it require so much work? Why am I here alone in the dark, grinding through repetition after repetition if this is supposed to be natural? That question, that uncomfortable question, it started eating at me. Because if I was naturally fast, naturally coordinated, naturally gifted, then why was I working so damn hard? So I began to watch, really watch, not just the performance you see on screen, not just the demonstration in front of the crowd. I started watching the invisible parts, the parts nobody talks about, the parts nobody sees. I watched how the naturally gifted really trained. I studied their habits, their methods, their approach. I looked for the things that happened when the cameras weren't rolling, when the audience went home, when the spotlight turned off. And what I discovered, my friend, what I discovered will change how you see every talented person you've ever met. It will change how you see yourself, because I found out that what we call talent, it's actually 5 specific illusions, 5 tricks of perception that fool us into believing in natural ability when something entirely different is happening. Let me show you these 5 illusions that create the talent myth. The first illusion is what I call the invisible sculptor. You know, when you look at a beautiful sculpture, you see the finished form, the smooth curves, the perfect proportions, the way the light catches every detail. It looks so natural, so effortless, like the marble was always meant to be that way. But what you don't see is the sculptor. You don't see the 10,000 hours of chiseling, the countless chips of stone that fell to the floor, the patience, the precision, the deliberate shaping that created what appears to be natural form. Every master is carved by 10,000 invisible hours. What you see as natural form is actually deliberate shaping. Let me tell you what I mean. For years, people would watch me move and say, look how fast he is, look how natural. They'd see me in demonstrations in films and they'd think, oh, he was born that way. But they never saw what I saw. They never saw me at 3 in the morning, alone in that empty gym, drilling the same movement until my muscles screamed. They never saw me repeating one simple punch 500 times, 600 times, until I could do it without thinking, until it became part of my nervous system. They saw the speed in broad daylight. They never saw the repetition in shadow. You see, my friend, I was not born fast. I was carved fast. Every single movement you've ever seen me make was sculpted through repetition, through dedication, through countless hours when nobody was watching. The sculptor had been working in secret. While the world was sleeping, while people were living their normal lives, the invisible sculptor was chiseling away at my reflexes, my timing, my coordination, hour after hour, day after day, year after year, carving away everything that was slow, everything that was clumsy, everything that was unnecessary. What remained was speed. What remained was precision, but it wasn't natural. It was carved. And here's what really opened my eyes. Everyone you call naturally gifted has an invisible sculptor. Every single one. The pianist whose fingers dance across the keys, 10,000 hours of scales. The athlete who makes the impossible look easy, 10,000 hours of fundamentals. The artist whose work takes your breath away, 10,000 hours of practice you never witnessed. But why can't we see this obvious truth? Why do we look at the finished sculpture and forget about the sculptor? The second illusion is what I call the observer's blindness. Here's the paradox, my friend. The eye that watches performance cannot see the process that created it. We are blind to the very thing that explains what we observe. Think about this for a moment. When you watch someone perform at the highest level, your attention is completely captured by the result, the speed, the skill, the apparent effortlessness. But that very focus on the performance makes you blind to everything that came before it. I remember the first time someone called me naturally fast. I was demonstrating a technique, and afterwards this martial artist came up to me and said, "Bruce, you're incredible, you're just naturally fast." And I stood there confused. Because in my mind I was thinking, but I practiced that move 10,000 times. I spent months just working on the timing, the distance, the precise angle of entry. But then I realized something that changed everything. They weren't lying. They literally couldn't see what I knew. From their perspective, they were watching a fast technique. From my perspective, I was seeing the result of countless hours of deliberate practice. The observer sees the performance. The performer knows the process. But the process is invisible to the observer, and it's like watching a magician, you know. Every magician understands this principle. The trick happens where you're not looking. While your eyes are focused on the dramatic gesture, the real work is happening somewhere else entirely. We've all been watching the wrong place. We watch the moment of performance and miss the years of preparation. We see the final demonstration and ignore the daily discipline. We focus on the result and become blind to the process. And because we can't see the process, we invent explanations. We call it talent, we call it natural ability, we create myths to fill the gap left by our blindness. But what if there was more to this blindness? What if it wasn't just about what we can't see, but about how small advantages get amplified into what looks like massive natural differences? The third illusion is what I call the amplification trap. You know, my friend, I've always been fascinated by rivers. How a small mountain stream, barely a trickle, can become a mighty river that carves through rock, that shapes entire landscapes. Small streams become mighty rivers not through magic, but through the patient gathering of countless drops. Each drop insignificant by itself, but together they create a force that seems impossible. What appears as natural flow is accumulated intention. And this is exactly what happens with what we call talent. What looks like natural, overwhelming ability is actually the result of small advantages that accumulate and amplify over time. Let me tell you how this worked in my own life. When I was young, I had some small advantages. Maybe I was a little more coordinated than some kids. Maybe I had a little more energy. Maybe I was just a little more stubborn about practicing. Nothing dramatic, nothing that screamed future martial arts master. But here's what happened. That little bit of extra coordination meant I picked up techniques slightly faster. That little bit of extra energy meant I could practice a little longer. That little bit of extra stubbornness meant I stuck with it when others quit. A little more practice led to a little more success. A little more success led to more confidence. More confidence led to even more practice. Better practice led to better results, which attracted better teachers. Better teachers led to better methods, which led to faster improvement. Each small advantage created the conditions for the next advantage. Each success opened doors that led to greater opportunities for development. You see what happened? The river carved its own banks. What started as tiny differences so small they were almost meaningless, got amplified through this feedback loop until they looked like massive natural advantages. By the time people saw me perform, they were seeing the accumulated result of years of amplification. They saw the mighty river and thought, he must have been born with all that water. But the river started as individual drops, gathering momentum through time and circumstance. The amplification trap makes us believe that what we're seeing is the starting point, when actually we're seeing the end result of a long process of compound development. But there's something even more deceptive about how we perceive talent. Something about the way our minds work that makes us miss the most important part of the story. The fourth illusion is what I call the architecture of ability. Here's something most people never realize. Skills are not born, they are built. Every single ability you've ever admired, every technique that takes your breath away, every performance that seems impossible, it's all construction. Every master is a cathedral constructed one stone at a time, following blueprints invisible to casual observers. You see, when people look at a great cathedral, they see the soaring arches, the perfect proportions, the way everything fits together so beautifully, and they think, this is magnificent, this is divine. But they don't see the architect's plans, they don't see the foundation work, the careful placement of each stone, the engineering principles that make it all possible. And that's exactly how we look at human ability. I'll never forget the moment this became clear to me. I was maybe 25 years old, and I was studying different martial arts systems, trying to understand how they worked, what made them effective. And suddenly it hit me. These weren't just random collections of techniques, they were architectural systems. Each movement had a purpose, each principle built on the last one. Everything was designed according to specific blueprints. And then I realized something even more profound. I wasn't a natural phenomenon, I was an architect. Every technique I'd developed, every skill I'd mastered, every capability I'd built, it all followed construction principles. There were blueprints, there were methods, there were systematic approaches to building speed, building power, building timing, building awareness. I wasn't born with these abilities. I had constructed them piece by piece, following blueprints that most people couldn't see. And once I understood the blueprints, everything changed. Because now I could build anything. If I wanted to develop a new capability, I didn't have to hope I was naturally gifted for it. I just had to understand the architectural principles and start construction. The blueprint for speed was different from the blueprint for power. The blueprint for flexibility was different from the blueprint for endurance. But they were all blueprints. They were all systems of construction. What we call natural talent is really just construction, so skillful, so complete, that the blueprints become invisible. But there's one more illusion, my friend. One that might be the most deceptive of all, because it's not just about what we can't see. It's about something that's been right in front of us the whole time. The fifth and final illusion is what I call the paradox of effortlessness. This one, my friend, this one might be the most beautiful and the most deceptive of all. Here's the paradox. The highest effort creates the appearance of no effort. The deepest struggle births the illusion of ease. What looks most natural required the most artifice. Think about this for a moment. When you watch a true master perform, what do you see? You see flow, you see grace, you see someone who makes the impossible look simple, who moves like water, who seems to be doing nothing at all while achieving everything. And what do you think? It's so natural for them, it's so easy, they're just gifted. But that effortlessness, that apparent naturalness, it's the greatest achievement possible in any field. It's not the starting point, it's the destination. Let me tell you about a master I once watched. This was years ago, when I was still trying to understand the secrets of true skill. I saw this old man demonstrating his art, and I was mesmerized. Every movement was perfect. Every technique flowed into the next like it was the most natural thing in the world. No strain, no effort, no visible struggle, just perfection. I thought, this man is truly gifted. This is what natural talent looks like. So I studied him for months. I watched him whenever I could. I tried to understand his gift, to figure out what made him so naturally excellent. And then one day, I got close enough to see his hands. The calluses were incredible, thick, deep calluses that could only come from decades of the most intensive practice. His knuckles were enlarged from impact. His fingers were bent from years of gripping. His palms told the story of 10,000 hours of repetition, 20,000 hours, maybe 30,000. And suddenly I understood. Effortlessness was his greatest achievement, not his starting point. All that grace, all that apparent naturalness, all that flowing perfection. It was the result of more effort, more struggle, more deliberate practice than most people put into anything in their entire lives. He had practiced until the struggle disappeared. He had repeated until the effort became invisible. He had trained until the artificial became natural. The paradox revealed itself. The most natural-looking performance requires the most unnatural amount of work. What we mistake for ease is actually the highest level of difficulty conquered. What we think is effortless is effort so complete, so total, that it transcends itself and becomes its opposite. And that's when I realized the full scope of the talent myth. It's not just that we can't see the development process, it's that the development process is specifically designed to make itself invisible. The goal of all that practice, all that struggle, all that effort is to disappear. The master's secret is that there is no secret. There is only work so complete that it erases all evidence of itself. Now you've seen through all 5 illusions. You understand how the talent myth operates, how it fools us into believing in limitations that don't exist. But knowing how we've been deceived is just the beginning. The real question is, what does this mean for you? What does this mean for your life, your potential, your future? Let me share with you the most liberating truth I've ever discovered. The raw material of greatness is equally distributed. Think about that for a moment. Every human being comes into this world with essentially the same neurological equipment, the same capacity for learning, the same potential for development. We're all built from the same blueprint, a brain that can adapt, muscles that can strengthen, coordination that can improve, skills that can be developed. What creates the differences we mistake for destiny? The tools for shaping that raw material, the methods, the systems, the approaches, the environments that some people discover and others never encounter. You know, for years I believed my own myth. I thought I was different, special, chosen. I thought my abilities made me fundamentally unlike other people. But when I finally understood these illusions, when I saw through the talent myth completely, everything changed. I realized I wasn't a genetic anomaly. I wasn't touched by some divine gift. I was simply someone who had discovered certain tools, certain methods, certain approaches to developing human potential. Tools that anyone could learn, methods that anyone could apply. You have the same raw material as any master who ever lived, the same neurological potential as Mozart, the same muscular potential as Muhammad Ali, the same learning capacity as Einstein. What they had that seemed so special, so unreachable, was access to the right tools and the dedication to use them. And here's what fills me with excitement for you. Those tools exist. The Invisible Sculptor has been waiting. The architecture of your ability is ready to begin. Every skill you've ever admired can be built. Every capability you've ever envied can be developed. Every level of performance you've ever thought was beyond your reach. It's all just construction work. What you call impossible is simply unbuilt. The speed you admire, there are blueprints for building speed. The strength you envy, there are methods for developing strength. The skills you think are beyond you, there are systematic approaches for developing any skill. The only difference between you and every person you've ever called talented is that they found the blueprints and started building. They discovered the tools and started sculpting. They understood the methods and started applying them. And now you know what they knew. Now you see what they saw. You are not limited by what you weren't born with. You are only limited by what you haven't yet chosen to build. The democracy of potential is the most beautiful truth I know. It means that greatness isn't reserved for the chosen few. It means that excellence isn't determined by genetic lottery. It means that every ceiling you think exists is actually just the floor of what's possible when you understand how human potential really works. The Invisible Sculptor is waiting for your instructions. The architecture of your ability is ready for construction. What will you choose to build? Here's the beautiful paradox, my friend. In trying to preserve the mystery of human greatness through talent mythology, we actually destroy the real mystery. You see, when we say someone is naturally gifted, when we attribute their abilities to genetic luck or divine selection, we think we're preserving something sacred about human achievement. We think we're protecting the wonder, the awe, the sense that some things are beyond ordinary understanding. But we're doing the opposite. We're killing the real mystery, the incredible capacity every human being has for transformation. Think about what's actually mysterious here. It's not that some people are born different. That's not mysterious. That's just genetics. That's just lottery. What's truly mysterious is that a human being can take the raw material they're given and transform it into something extraordinary. That consciousness can shape matter. that intention can rebuild capability, that the human mind can literally rewire the human body through focused effort over time. The democracy of potential is far more mysterious and beautiful than the aristocracy of talent ever was. Because talent mythology gives us a universe where greatness is predetermined, where excellence is reserved for the chosen few, where the extraordinary is separated from the ordinary by birth. But the truth gives us a universe where any human being can transform themselves into something they never imagined possible. Where the only limits are the ones we accept. Where every person carries within them the potential for their own version of greatness. That's not less mysterious than talent. That's more mysterious than talent could ever be. You came here today perhaps believing you were limited by what you weren't born with. I hope you leave understanding that you're only limited by what you haven't yet chosen to build. The Invisible Sculptor has been waiting your whole life. What will you choose to carve?